and good afternoon, everyone, as you join in from all parts of Africa and the rest of the world. It is my great pleasure as your host today to welcome you to this fraymedia Foundation webinar on African women visual media creators, where we are spotlighting the grounding works of women across the continent who are leading and shaping voices in visual media spanning from photography, documentary productions, digital content creation, novels, as well as animation and toon business. It's a full and vibrant program that we have today, and it's going to go by very quickly as we will be showcasing 6 leading women, and this webinar forms part of the fraymedia Foundation's recent hashtag Africa Through Her Lens campaign, which highlighted the works of 12 women who are visual storytellers, and together these initiatives, including this webinar, have illuminated countries including South Africa, Kenya, the DRC, Zimbabwe, Angola, Zambia, Cameroon, Nigeria, Ethiopia, as well as Malawi. So we are very excited to have you all join us today. And as we start off, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat function here on Zoom and tell us where you're joining us from, as well as what you're looking forward to the most from this webinar. I am Bongiwe Tutu. I'm the Operations Manager at fraymedia Foundation, and I'm very captivated by our everyday storytellers who capture the richness of life, of culture, and creativity on the continent. And during this webinar, we can look forward to important as well as thought-provoking insights to ways in which we can amplify the voices and the works of African women visual media creators, to explore the role of visual storytelling in cultural representation, activism, and socio-political change, in discussing systemic barriers that are faced by women in visual media, including costs, funding, access, safety, as well as representation, and in sharing knowledge, tools, and strategies for aspiring creators and media professionals, while building cross-border solidarity and connections among African professionals in the media. A warm welcome once again to you all, and especially to our speakers who will be sharing their experiences and lessons with us and offering us a footing to which we can drive real and meaningful impact in our African communities through the lens and the screen. And as we settle in, I will be sharing the social media handles of fraymedia Foundation so that you can stay connected with us as we continue in the aims of the foundation, which is creating a community where women in media can thrive, can lead, and shape the industry within the communities that they represent. So as I go into the running program of the webinar today, I would like to ask our speakers to please join me on camera with their videos on, and I will proceed with formal introductions within each of their presentations. We are joined by our CEO of fraymedia Foundation, Paula Frey, who's going to be presenting us with official welcoming remarks as well as a bit of reflection on the works of the foundation. We're also joined by Becky Awo Renni, who's a documentary and nature photographer in Nigeria, Neo Ntsoma, a multi-award winning photographer in South Africa, Vanessa Ann Sinden, who's a senior producer at Triggerfish in South Africa, Minenhle Luthuli, who's a filmmaker and board member of Sisters Working in Film and TV, SWIFSA in South Africa, Sosina Mengustu, a documentary and travel culture photographer in Ethiopia, as well as Abdul Salam Aderonke, documentary producer and novelist in Nigeria. Welcome to you all. Thank you so much. We're really looking forward to your contributions and your insights in this webinar today. So we'll now start off with official welcome remarks from our CEO at fraymedia Foundation, Paula Frey, who's going to speak a bit more on the aims and missions of the foundation. Thank you so much, Paula. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Bongiwe. I feel like we're all being warmly welcomed. It's so nice to see all of you. Nayo and I go back decades. Nayo, if I can tell everyone, where we worked together at the Star newspaper many, many moons ago. And Nayo will tell you that, I mean, when it comes to photography, I think it really is the very often understated craft in journalism, to the degree that I think few things are more impactful than visual representation on your story. And yet we don't celebrate photographers and visual artists and animators and graphic artists enough, particularly not enough in an environment where we know that audiences are really looking at seeing their stories, hearing their stories, and not just reading their stories. So, welcome everyone to today's space where I'm hoping that we'll reflect and connect, but also celebrate the women behind the lens. I want to tell you just a little bit about Frey Media Foundation. It was founded by myself and Shamila Bhagavat and Bongi Wimalangeni. We started out together on a city desk and have really grown together over the years. And we wanted to create a space where women could essentially pay it forward to the next generation and help us create, as Bongi was saying, a community in which women in media could thrive. Women media managers, women media owners, and women media sources, women media producers. Really feel that we want to be able to bring our collective resources together in order to support women in media. We also believe that to have a pluralistic and inclusive media landscape, it really starts by enabling women to lead. And so our vision is to really promote the emergence and sustainability of women-led and women-owned commercial and non-commercial media enterprises, not just in South Africa, but across Southern Africa. And so to support this, what we offer is education and training opportunities. Our flagship program is the Entrepreneur Program, which where we have cohorts of women go through a business development program. We have a program for media managers that we've been doing. We have these kinds of webinars that are specifically aimed at increasing skills building. We have networking opportunities. We have mentorship programs. We're also looking at grant making. We are going to launch in August the second of our entrepreneur grant, but we're also going to launch a grant specifically targeted at women who are transitioning from journalism into public relations, actually, and we'll have a startup grant there. And that grant is in recognition of shrinking newsrooms and the needs for women to really to be able to sustain themselves. And then we do mentorship, we have organizational development support, and just generally looking at opportunities to partner with organizations to promote women in media. So, whether you're an independent visual storyteller or part of a growing creative business, or even if you're working in a newsroom or production house, we'd like to see how we can support your journey and how we can get more photographers into our entrepreneur program, more visual artists looking at sustaining and growing their business. Um, if you're interested in joining any of our programs, or if you have a project that you think aligns with our goals and you'd like us to collaborate with you, please do reach out. We are committed to working with those who want to change the media narrative and elevate women's voices. So thank you again for being here, everyone. We're excited about this conversation. I'm excited about the programs that we're hoping to do to support women visual artists going forward, and really looking forward to today's discussion. Thank you very much, Bangwe. Before I end, I would urge you to follow us on our social media platforms, but particularly our LinkedIn platform, where we really do try to not only share invites for opportunities, but also the resources that come out as a result of that. Thank you very much, everyone. Pangi?
Thank you very much, Paula, for that warm welcome, as well as giving some background to the impact that the Frame Media Foundation is doing within the continent and within the broader diaspora worldwide. So we are going to hear from our first three speakers, and then we'll proceed with our first Q&A session. So the first three speakers we're going to hear from is Becky Awo Renni, Ntsoma, as well as Vanessa and Sinden. Thereafter, we'll have 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A and then lead on to our second group of three speakers, which is Sosina Mengustu, Deronke Abdul Salam, as well as Minentle Lutuli. And then we'll have our final Q&A thereafter. So please do share your questions and comments within the chat and Q&A functions here on Zoom. And you can also follow us on our platforms that we've just shared within the chat function. Follow the Frame Media Foundation to stay connected with us and engaged within our initiatives and programs. Now, without further ado, I will hand over to our first speaker, Becky Awo Renni, and I will ask Lesego to please present her bio on screen so we can brief. There we go. Thank you so much. So Becky Awo Renni is a freelance documentary and nature photographer whose work blends a deep passion for storytelling with a keen eye for the everyday beauty. Since the beginning of her journey in 2019, she has used her lens to capture moments of authenticity, emotion, and human connection. Rennie has collaborated on impactful visual storytelling projects with notable organizations including the United Nations, Unzipped Stories, RTV, and the European Press Photo Agency. And her photography has been featured in the Republic Journal, and in July 2023, she debuted her first solo exhibition, We Are Timeless, a powerful reflection on identity, memory, and shared humanity. We will be sharing the full bios of each of the speakers on the chat function for you to read more about their work. And now I would like to hand over to Becky. Thank you so much, Becky, and over to you.
Hello, everyone. Good
Hello.
afternoon from Nigeria.
Afternoon. Thank you. You can proceed with your presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. First, I would like to thank Free Media Ongiwe. I hope I pronounced the name well. Thank you for this opportunity to share my story and to share my experience as an African documentary photographer here in Nigeria. Bongiwe has done the introduction, so I wouldn't like to waste our time. So, Renni Stories, that's my brand name, but my name is Becky Awo Renni, and still becoming, framing culture, courage, and change. Okay, so this is me. You can see a few of my pictures here. Growing up, I did not like taking pictures at all, but then 2019, the story just changed, and I'm now a photographer that loves taking photographs of people, and finally loves taking pictures of myself too. I'm a freelance documentary and nature photographer. I started with nature photography when I started photography. That's after my training, and I met a few people in my early days that said nature photography won't sell in Nigeria and in Africa because we don't have the people for that, but I kept on going. So now meet my art. These are a few photographs that I have taken this year and years back. Some pictures are cultural festivals in Nigeria because I love culture, and growing up in school, they tell us that in Nigeria we have three major cultures, major tribes: the Igbo, the Yoruba, and the Hausa. Then the Hausas, they categorize the Hausa people in the north, but in the north we have so many tribes and cultures. So that's why I pick interest in doing the whole documentary on culture. So Africa is more than what the world shows. Growing up, we usually see the crises, the hunger, the chaos, but photography became a way to show what's really seen, the beauty, the culture, and the strength of the African people. Like I said, I started with nature and landscape, especially from Plateau State, my state of origin. Um, it has beautiful landscape. If you're ever in Nigeria, you should visit Plateau State. And the weather is beautiful. I think we call it the United States in Nigeria because it's one of the coldest states in Nigeria, Plateau State. And over time, I shifted my focus to documenting festivals, communities, and underrepresented tribes. So, because in Nigeria, we have the major tribes and then minor tribes. And my interest is not just on the major tribes, it's on documenting the minor tribes and the minorities so that people get to know, even Nigerians will get to know that there are other tribes in Nigeria and it's not just Yoruba, Hausa, and Igbo. My long-term visions here, because we're trying to reclaim African narratives, is to turn these stories into books and archives that preserves who we are for the future generation to come in Africa and in diaspora. Navigating a male-dominated industry. For me, excellence has been a non-negotiable. Like, very good is not good enough. Where excellence is, it's there. Very good is not good enough. So I always want to be excellent with what I'm doing. And because it's a male-dominated industry, I try to improve on my skill. Facing doubts and assumptions are being overlooked. It's still common. Because I remember one time I was at an assignment with a male colleague and I was taking the photography aspect. So the clients approached him and said, "Oh, I hope she can deliver because I'm a lady, you know." And my male colleague said, "Oh no, she's very good at her job and she'll deliver well." So that gave me the confidence. So I learned to build confidence, to sharpen my skills and let the work speak for itself. So I think when I started, I didn't want to put my face out there because I want the work to speak for itself. I don't want people to know Rennie stories that, oh, this is Rennie here. I want people to recognize the work first before they recognize who the photographer is or who the storyteller is. Sometimes underestimated, sometimes people just hope that as a lady, you mess up the job. So they say, oh, we said it, she's a girl. What does she have to offer? But then I still show up with courage, hold space, and do the job excellently. And so far, I would say I've been trying my best. There are tough moments, but choosing growth and confidence daily keeps the fire burning for me. On the aspect of collaboration, sorry, I hope I'm not fast.
Okay. No, you're fine. You're fine,
Thank
yes.
You. Thank you. On the aspect of collaborations, most collaborations for me came through people who believed in my work, who believed in the work, who believed that I can deliver. And I have tried not to disappoint. Yeah, recently, yesterday, a friend of mine reached out and asked me, how do you deal with rejections? And I was shocked. I said, why are you asking me this question? And he said, because he just received a mail of rejection, but how do I handle it? And I said, to be honest, sometimes I just go back and cry myself out. And then after crying, I just get up and face the world, what I need to improve, what I need to learn. So I got referred for opportunities with the UN, European Press Union, the Republic Journal, on Zip Stories, and a lot of organizations. Yeah, there are moments where I didn't deliver on the job well, and I took the whole critiques and corrections. Sometimes I cry, to be honest, but then I go back to learn. I go back to the drawing board. I go back to ask myself questions. What do I need to improve? What do I need to learn? So I put myself on the learning path every day. And sometimes it's not about being in the room, it's about being remembered. That's for me, because I've had most of the collaborations, like I said, are people who believed in the work. Mentorship, sisterhood, and visibility made the difference for me, and it's still making the difference for me. I've gotten collaborations from my female colleagues, from my female friends, and also from my male colleagues, the ones that actually believed in the work. staying visible, showing up consistently, and being excellent. That's what creates momentum for me. Monetizing the craft. When I saw this question, I asked myself, have you really gotten the whole picture on this aspect? To be honest, um, it's not it's not something that when you start photography, you just know how to monetize it. Because I was a teacher for 4 years before I moved into photography full time. So, teaching job, you're always in the class. You wake up in the morning, it's the normal routine. You wake up in the morning and then you head to class and come back. At the end of the month, you get your salary. But then photography, it's a different ball game. So, monetizing the work has been a journey, not a quick result, to be honest. And most income comes from referrals, collaborations, and returning clients that I'm really grateful for. Still learning to treat the art like a business. I'm still learning that every day. I have a journal here that I just go online.
Oh, I think she might have disconnected there. I think we can just take the next speaker while we allow Becky to reconnect with us and continue in her presentation. So, Newo, hope you're ready to start your presentation. And in the meantime, I would ask our attendees to please share in your questions, your comments to our speakers in the chat and Q&A function here on Zoom. And Newo, if you can please share your screen. Lesego, there we go. Sorry, no. Lesego was just going to put up your quick introduction.
Okay. All right. All right. Let me stop sharing.
There we go. So Newa is a multi-award winning South African photographer who is renowned for her pioneering contributions to photojournalism and portraiture, as well as music photography. And she's a true trailblazer who has made a history as the first Black woman photographer at the Star newspaper and the first female recipient of the Muhammad Amin Award, which is part of the CNN African Journalist of the Year Photography Prize. She has a very long bio, which reads exceptionally well, and we've shared these bios with everyone on the chat function. So please do read up on the incredible work that our speakers are impacting and engaging within the continent. So without further ado, Newa, I will hand over to you, and we're looking forward to your presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let me.
You may share your screen now. Yes, thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone.
Afternoon.
I feel honored actually to be presenting in front of Paula, because Paula was one of the people that really kind of like inspired me and showed me that as Black women, we can really, really, reach, like kind of like break the ceiling, if I may say that. Because when I started at the Star as an intern, Paula was then appointed as the first female editor of the Saturday Star. And I went out to introduce myself to Paula as somebody that I have known about, but I had not met. So having her and the platform, sharing this platform with Paula, is really an incredible opportunity for me to really show her my journey since we've last thing I interacted, but also to share my journey with the broader community. So I was born, I thought, maybe it's important for me to include my photo album, as my photo album, as in like my family photo album, is the one that actually inspired me to be a photographer. I grew up in apartheid South Africa, and there were very scarce, there was like a scarcity of like really positive images coming in the media at the time. But in my family archives, even in my household, there were like activities that were happening that I felt like they needed to have been celebrated and be put out. So these are my parents, fashionistas, And they've also kind of like influenced my fashion in photography, because I always tell people that there is no way that I can separate myself from my upbringing. Everything that happened when I was growing up has kind of like influenced my work. Hence, my work is very diverse. I don't specialize like most photographers. They'll say they specialize in one thing. Much as I was, I launched like the media industry, kind of like launched my career. But I'm very versatile as a photographer, and it's all reflected in my portfolio as I go about. So in my family album, there were pictures of like, celebrations. And some of the celebrations, I also took part in those celebrations. My mother was a nurse. She was a humanitarian. She took her work very serious. She, like for her, it wasn't just like a means to earn a living. She went above and beyond for her work, which also kind of like influenced my documentary take. And she was also an event organizer on weekends. So she had a day job as a nurse, but then on weekends she'll organize like events and all that. So my passion in like photographing the entertainment industry, I think it was inspired by this experience, having grown up in the, like raised by a woman who is like in every space. She was also a politician at some point. So I think that experience, it kind of like shaped how I perceive life, how I perceive the environment, and how also I capture the people that I'm supposed to be the voice for. So in 1977, when I was about 4 years old, we were evicted from this house. This is the house that I grew up in Vryburg. So we were evicted due to the land reform. I don't like during apartheid. There was a law which I forgot what it is, but like to demarcate people from their spaces and put them in spaces that really they were less resourceful. And it was really heartbreaking for me as a child, 4 years old, to see this. So we then relocated to Mafikeng, which was a little bit more advanced in like its policies, education, and all sorts. So this is a picture of me when I was in photo school. In photo school, I learned that photography is not just about taking pictures, but it is actually an art and a science. So I included this image because this is what actually made me fall in love and take my work very serious, because it was more about like learning how to capture images, but also how to add how to improve your vocabulary in your image creation. So we had all these tools. I studied at two institutions, Pretoria Technikon and the Peninsula Technikon in Cape Town. So after I left my studies, I was dismissed from my studies because of apartheid as well, because being the first Black woman to actually study at these two institutions, it was not easy. So I actually had to oppose the system. And when you're fighting on your own, you be like the system automatically labels you as a rebel. So I was actually framed like that. That's why it was so difficult for me to continue, to a point of them dismissing me. I continued taking pictures. I went back to Mafikeng, and then I learned that Michael Jackson was in South Africa in 1997. I went to Sun City to go and capture Michael Jackson's press conference. That's when I got to experience how photographers that are working for mainstream media, the pressures, but it was exciting. I befriended them. I landed a job at the Star due to that. But then there were pictures that kept on recurring in my mind, pictures of the dark continent, pictures that were like painting Africa as a really, really ugly continent of people that are barbaric. And I wanted to shape the narrative. I wanted to change that perception of how my people were actually like perceived in mainstream media. The Star was a little bit advanced in that regard, because the photographic section was led by somebody who was a visionary and very supportive in the way we expressed ourselves. She supported us through and through. If you had an idea, she will support it. And I then decided that I am not going to just add to the numbers because I worked with superstars here. Much as I was like a newbie in the space, but I worked with like people who were like incredibly accomplished in the industry, people who won like multiple awards. And the pressure of being the first Black women in that space, it came with a lot of responsibilities because I kind of like told myself, like, if I don't perform as well as, as well as my peers, then it means that I will actually be disadvantaging those that will come after me. That's why I put myself in situations that sometimes were like very challenging, just because I wanted to prove a point that as a woman and as a Black woman, I could actually do all these things. I covered raids with police. I befriended a lot of police. So whenever there was a raid, I'll be there. I was everywhere. But the one thing that is key, it was that when I joined the Star, there was it was shortly after the Bang Bang Club. They had been photographing the conflicts in Togoza, and I often question how they actually portrayed, like how often they portrayed the victims. It was so disheartening to see that people engage with gruesome images like that. A person could be somebody's uncle, a person could be somebody's father, and only to find their pictures explicitly spread out in the newspaper. And I challenged that. And Robin was very supportive about it. And these are like some of the images that I took. I was like, if you go on an event, if you go in an accident scene, if you go in a shooting scene, and there are people scattered around that are dead, corpses scattered around, please apply some respect when you photograph them. It's all about like how you frame your pictures. So I introduced this new take into like, we have to wait until people are covered up. We have to apply dignity. We have to, capture people in a sense that you ask yourself, how would you feel if you are the one, being captured this way? I was then assigned to go to Alex at some point to go and photograph this elderly couple that were destitute. I found this old man lying on the bed, it seems like he was actually kind of like gasping even, he had to be resuscitated by my colleague who was actually leading the story. And the gentleman that had called us to come and like document this couple. What I saw here, it was more like a painting. I wanted to take a picture that dignifies this destitute couple. Unfortunately, I couldn't include all the other images, but this one in particular, I actually titled it "The Picture That Added a Heartbeat." 2 weeks, this picture was published on a fan page of the Star, and a lot of people were calling in, they were offering to assist this couple. 2 weeks later, when we revisited the couple, this family, the gentleman is the one that actually opened the door for us. So that's, it's more like when you are doing something with intention. My work is always about, I'm very intentional about my approach in photography. I don't just take pictures that are there to just add or support a story. That has always been my mission when I take pictures. I want to add value. I want impactful images that will change a course of some sort. I worked mainly at night, and I will capture incidents like this, but it was more about the beauty. This is Alexander at night. You could think that probably it's Sentin or something, but it's more like in the ugly, you can still find beauty in it. I've always been motivated by that. I photographed politicians. I photographed a lot of events, even elections. I always was looking for, where can I find beauty in this ugliness? It has always been my mission throughout. So at some point, I was assigned to go to Hillbrow to photograph another raid at the brothel. And these ladies, they were shying away from the camera, but I assured them that I will represent them with dignity, because most of them, it's not like they wanted to live this life. They came from Swaziland. They came from all over Africa, hoping to find a better living in Johannesburg, only to find that there was nothing for them. And they resorted to prostitution because they were brainwashed by the pimps in Hillbrow. So I needed to give them that respect that I felt like they deserved. They had children. Some of them, they had babies in there. So it was really heartbreaking, to see like children growing up in this kind of environment. But also, I knew that these children, they will grow up at some point, and probably their parents' lives will change for the better. But if they can, at some point, if they can be able to access this kind of images, they will know that whoever that took these pictures applied respect and respected their parents. They were young at 16 years old. Some of them, they had run away from home, obviously, but I just tried to just capture them with respect, that if ever their lives change at some point, at least they will look at that picture and not, and sense respect, the respect that I afforded them. And then their World in Frames, it's a body of work that won me the CNN award. I photographed this. It was way past my knockoff time at work. I was so committed. When you are really pushed, when you are really driven, you go above and beyond. And I learned this from home. I learned this from my mother, So I took this picture. This was actually my first fire event that I've ever covered, ever. I had covered everything else, but not fire. And I immersed myself in the story so much that I didn't want to leave any stone untouched. And I'm grateful that I was presented with this award as the first woman, but I thought like it was not enough. Yes, I dedicated this award to all the photographers, female photographers in Africa, and all those that don't know why they are here in this life, to maybe be inspired to see that they might have something important to express. They might not know how to express it. Maybe photography could be the outlet for them, So it was more like, I'm rebranding the African women in the continent. I am really trying to paint a picture that this is possible for all of us. You can also do it. You might be in the wilderness not knowing what you want to do, but you have a lot to express. You could probably just think of maybe becoming a photographer. Hence, I've been very, very in my mission into like trying to correct the image of not only South Africans, by the way, but of Africans. I made sure that I use my own resources to travel the continent and teach workshops, engage with the young photographer, with young women, and just to introduce them to the practice, so that at least we don't have to be counted. And then it's like, we don't have Black female photographers in Africa. We are there now. We have multiplied. And I'm grateful that when I was still younger, I managed to do that. I managed to add to the numbers. I managed to recruit as many women, including in like townships. I would go to townships on weekends to go and teach workshops. So it's something that was more like an extension of my being, just making it my purpose to go and just educate people about the importance of like telling our own stories. I've been to Uganda, I've been to Zambia, I've been to Ethiopia, I've been to most parts of Africa. I've even been to Nigeria. I still wish that I could go to Nigeria at some point, but I have covered pretty much a lot of countries in Africa. I found myself in Kenya at some point. I spent a day with the Maasai family. I spent time with the Maasai family. I arrived at 5 o'clock in the morning and finished off at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, because I really wanted to understand this culture. I had been seeing pictures in National Geographic magazine. I've been seeing pictures photographed by Europeans, coming to Africa to come and tell our stories. And I wanted to see how different will the pictures come out if I am, as an African, documenting this tribe. I spent a lot of time with the women. They welcomed me in their houses, and it was so warm, because one of my translators told me that this is the first time they have ever seen a Black female photographer. That's why they invited me in their most sacred space. Usually you can actually Google everywhere. You hardly ever see a picture of the inside of the heart of a Maasai, but I was let in, because I approached them with respect, and also because of them being fascinated with me, because they had never seen anyone that looks like me before. But I enjoyed spending time there. I had my own concerns about how women didn't have a voice, really. And me being a feminist, I actually opposed. I stood up to the men there. And I told them that this is not how you should actually treat women. So photography, it's more like a gateway for me to kind of like, whatever that doesn't sit well with me, my concerns, I can raise them because it's a very powerful tool. It's a very intimidating tool. It's more like a weapon, but it's not a weapon of destruction. It's a weapon of influence. So I've always used my photography in that regard. This body of work here is the task force in South Africa, the first female intake of the thing at the task for the police task force. I was invited with my colleague Jill Gifford to go and document this training, a very intense training. I felt like I wasn't just going there to take pictures. I needed to participate as well. I needed to participate in the process. I needed to challenge myself. I needed to challenge not only my technical skills, but also my willpower, my strength. I walked with them 50 Ks at some point. There was a training where they had to walk 50 Ks. I walked and we were offered a car, but I refused to take that. If I'm to tell people's stories, I have to also embed myself in the story. I have to be part of the story. I've always felt like for me to be able to come into other people's spaces and claim that I have a skill to actually tell the story without actually understanding their pain, their joy, I have to participate in the process. So I think maybe that's why my pictures have always stood out, because they have a sense of like deeper understanding of the subject that I tackle, that I always tackle. And then I was afforded the opportunity to go to Bangladesh for a year. I was there to teach photography, only to find that it was more like a university for me. I came out more empowered in a sense. I thought that I was going to, impart knowledge to the community in there, but only to find that I came back a different person. I came back knowing what Ubuntu really is. The people in Bangladesh, they taught me Ubuntu in a true sense of it. We have here like in South Africa, but when you go to Asia, when you go to people that are less resourced, and very humble people, they welcome me in their houses. I then chose to document this story. I had left my son at home. and I was trying to find a story that I could really sink my teeth in, a story that will not only draw me to connecting with the women who are in my position, where they had to work and still have to be parents and still have to be, supporters, breadwinners. So these women, they work 12-hour shifts. 12-hour shifts, not 8-hour shifts like we do in South Africa. They work 12-hour shifts. They break stones into sand. There's no machinery in place. And I felt like it was a very difficult job. We always feel like as women, we are not trusted enough with the most difficult, with the most challenging roles. But this challenged me. I asked myself, women empowerment, how far is it stretched in these countries? Will I be happy to be doing this every day and still have to, be okay and put up a smile and just this is a job. It was very intense. And I spent about 6 months, documenting the story. I then, so this project has been exhibited all over, it has been published in certain journals. That's more about touching on women empowerment. Women, what is that we are capable of doing and what is that we are not capable of? So, and I titled this Saris in the Sand because what I saw was just a wave of saris moving around, saris, and also with my influence of fashion photography, I captured that as well, but also applied the dignity. I didn't want to just go there and just try to, maybe kind of undermine the process, if I may to say that. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to also add some respect in the process. I went to India, I documented the Mother Teresa home. This was more a gift from my mother who had already passed away. And my mother was a very staunch Christian. And I felt like me connecting with her and maybe just saying, thank you, Mother, for giving me the opportunity to do what I love. I came back to South Africa. I started photographing quiet to culture, which was really buzzing at the time. Also, it was also a deliberate decision because I didn't want anybody coming from anywhere in the world to come to Africa, to come to South Africa and document a story that I was already a part of. I wanted to to be the driver of the story. I knew that it was big. I wasn't going to be able to do it on my own, but I wanted to be the leading person in it. I then was awarded a National Geographic for the story. And that's when I started really owning up to believing that I have done my dues. I didn't have to be proving a point anymore. Let me settle to the pictures that initially inspired me, which was like portraits that I saw in my family albums. Let me try and capture my people with love and dignity, and not be chasing deadlines, and not be doing it because it serves a certain purpose, but it serves my purpose and the purpose of those that I'm photographing. I photograph fashion, I photograph all sorts of things, including music, as it's already stated in my bio. So there is nothing really that I cannot say that I haven't photographed. I have photographed in the mines, I have photographed in I worked with civil engineers. I'm everywhere. And one of the reasons why I spread myself throughout like that, it was because at some point when I was working at Sunday Times, I was assigned to go and photograph an event. And when I arrived there, I was sent back by the organizer because she felt like she was being disrespected. And only because she had never seen anyone who looks like me taking serious pictures. And a photographer who is white and male had to be called to go and, fill in for me. And I got offended. And I told myself, this is not something that is going to happen to any of the younger photographers that are coming after me. I am going to spread myself. I'll be in magazines, I'll be in galleries, I'll be in boardrooms, I'll be everywhere. So that if a young Ntsoma, maybe a young Neo coming from Freiburg, wanting to dominate these spaces, she mustn't be turned back. She must also mention me as somebody who's done it before. So it's more like a pressure that I put upon myself. And I have no regrets because I know that it has yield results. Now we have female photographers that are shooting campaigns, but I started that. I started shooting in magazines. I bulldozed all those doors. When they will say no, I'll still return. I will show them new pictures. I will finance those shoots just so I could purchase something fresh that aligns with whatever they wanted for their magazines, just so I could actually have a page or two in the magazine, and so that I can share it with the younger photographers that I was trying to inspire. So, no limitations. It's all about perseverance. It's all about being determined to do something and sticking to your purpose and your mission. I run a company called Ntsoma Productions. It has been, I started it in 2007, but I didn't know what to specialize in, as I do all sorts of things. And I had to actually employ the expertise of a manager, of somebody who manages the artist. And then she told me that you need to scale down. You need to focus on one area. If you want to be successful, scale down. And I had to weigh out and say, the way I get the most money is in the corporate. And a lot of people at the time, they couldn't understand why I left for the journalism to go into corporate. It's because I have a child. I needed to feed my child, but I still continued doing other projects and I built relationships with Forbes magazine, where I helped them to set up a photographic unit. I also, through my contacts in Africa, I connected them with all the photographers that I had mentored in Africa, so that they don't have to send a photographer from South Africa to go and photograph in Nigeria, in Lusaka, for instance. It was more about I have planted enough seed for it to actually bear fruits. So thank you, everyone. This is my statement. I always say, she who dares wins. And this is a testament to my journey. I have pushed boundaries. I have not been the one who took rejection lightly. I have bulldozed every door possible. And I think Paula can also attest to this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Neo. I'm sure everyone is clapping their hands to you. What an incredible journey that you have marked, and to own this and to say, she who dares wins. It's really inspiring what you're lending us today. We really appreciate it. And if I can just reflect on some of the comments that we are getting from our attendees, Nikita Rakimsun is saying that she feels completely out. Well, let me read it in the direct words. I feel completely out of my depth being in the presence of such amazing women. Photography is so much more than storytelling. It's a method of resistance and countering the dominant narrative. Yes, you are disrupting the narrative, reclaiming the lens, telling the truth with power and tenderness. So thank you so much, Neo. And I think that also is a reflection of our first speaker, Becky, who was also reflecting on her journey in photography, how photography came to become part of your life. And it's so great to see how you also translated that into a sustaining business for yourself to be able to thrive in the photography industry, because that's a very challenging space to get a consistency of revenue that you can rely on. So thank you so much for also lending us that insight on how you can turn your passion into a business that will allow you to still continue in the things that make you wake up every day and say, "She who dares wins." And so, with that point, I will now hand over back to our first speaker, Becky Awo. She was disconnected, but she was able to get back into the room. So, Becky, if you are able to share your presentation, or I can share it on my side. And thank you. We can continue with your reflections. You were also on the topic of revenue and how to sustain your career within the challenges of financial constraints. So please, if you can proceed with monetizing the craft, yes.
Okay, sorry. Let me go back and share again. Sorry, everyone. Technical issues. Okay, so I think I am back.
Yes, we can see your screen.
And we are on monetizing the craft, and I think I'm on the third point that says most incomes. So most of my incomes comes from referrals and collaborations, and also returning clients. Referrals from colleagues I've worked with, and then collaborations from, I think, okay, so I'll give an example of one time I was referred for an assignment, and I had no idea that two people referred me, so it's always a joyful thing to hear that people see you and they know what you are capable of doing, so they refer you. To be honest, I'm still learning to treat the art like a business. And making money in photography or through photography, it's not something you just wake up and start photography and you start making money from it. So you have to keep showing up and be consistent, improve your craft, and try to stay visible. The process isn't perfect, but it's unfolding, and I am grateful. So staying true to the voice and open to the journey. The first key point here is stay honest to yourself and to your clients, to the craft, and to the people you're working with. I loved Neo's work and how she approached the women in Kenya, and they opened up their doors for her to come in and document that story. Is because I believe she stayed honest to herself and to them, so they were open to and free to share their stories with her. So I think I have seen that worked for me in different situations. Always learning, always refining the craft. Vulnerability is real. And there are moments where you go to document a story, because I don't just do cultural stories. Sometimes I do the humanitarian stories, and you hear stories that will move you to tears, but you just have to choose where to be vulnerable sometimes when telling your story, when trying to tell their story, because they need you to be there for them also. So also have a solid cycle, people who remind me of where I started, how I started. Think everyone, if you're starting the craft, you should start with your peers, start with the people in your circle. That will help you grow. because most of the time we are always looking at the people ahead of us. But I mean, they started with their own peers and their own circle. So if you can find your own circle to grow and the circle is willing to grow and improve, start with a solid circle. Excellence is my compass, but I'm still becoming, and that's okay. Well, the bigger picture here, photography isn't just art, it's identity, it's history, and it's truth telling. Every story shared creates room for more voices to rise. And that's how we share our story in Africa. And African women have the power to reframe how we are seen by others and by ourselves. So we show up for ourselves in a good way, in an excellent way. And there are moments where you go and then they see you as an African woman and they believe you're not supposed to do this. You can't be as good as others because you're from Africa, you're from Nigeria, you're from South Africa, you're from Kenya. You know, this is more than personal, it's collective. We have to join our hands together as African women to tell our stories and to change our narrative. Because for me, I've not been to any African country yet, but I've seen stories and people have initiate conversations with other African photographers, and it's almost the same story all the time. So we have the power to change the narrative. And so let's keep showing up with our lenses, our voices, and our truths. Before now, I would like to just walk us through some of my work, just to share. Give me a minute, please. Uh-oh, sorry, 1 minute. So these are some of the landscape pictures I took. This is somewhere in Plateau State. So when you come to Jos, is a beautiful place. And Jos is a city. It's the capital city in Plateau State. And these are some of the landscape you would find. This is a picture I took from a Yoruba festival, Ojude Oba. That's where the Yoruba people, they love their culture. They love to look out and to come out in an elegant way. They love colors. So I had to go there to document. This is a picture I took at a Doba festival in Bauchi State, Nigeria. It's the Hausa people, the Northern people festival, the Muslims. This is also from Doba. This is the Yoruba festival too. This is in Lagos. So sharing the everyday life of people, Nigerians, Africans, you know. This was my first time at a beach, and I just had to take pictures there, you know, because it shows the power of Africans and what we do to not be lazy, you know. So this particular picture, I took it because growing up, there's this thing they say that men don't carry things on their head. That's in my own culture and not my culture per se. Most especially in Nigeria, they will tell you that men don't carry things on their head. So when I saw this, I just had to take it because, I mean, he's carrying water on his head, packs of water on his head. And here again, he's in front, and then I think this is his wife. They were together, but she was behind him. And this is a garden, a home garden and farm in Jos, owned by a family friend. She has apples, roses, rosemaries, so many plants in her home. This is her. I love to document her because she loves my camera. Anytime I'm at her place with the camera, she's always open, you know. She's like, Rennie, Becky, come and take pictures of me. So I just had to document this moment. These are rosemary. I remember one time I took pictures of some flowers and landscape, and someone was asking me online, is this in Nigeria? I said, yes, this is Nigeria, and this is Jos. So,
Becky, I'm sorry to cut you. If you can please try to wrap up.
okay, all right.
Yes,
So,
sorry about that.
no problem, it's fine.
We can keep sharing the
Oh,
photography on our platforms as we have done previously as well through the Africa Through Her Lens campaign. So I'll allow you to close off, please.
okay. So, finally, thank you. This is still unfolding, but one thing is clear: our voices, our images, and our presence matters. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Becky. It's been a very inspiring session with our first two speakers, and everyone is throwing flames and all sorts of emojis in the chat function, giving applause to our first speakers. Thank you so much for your reflections. It's been very, very captivating, and to have experience of the art that you've taken over the years is truly remarkable contribution that you're making to society, and how everyone is so inspired, and people are commenting that some of our attendees, Diana Chiwanga is saying Neo is the reason why some of us managed to break down barriers in the so-called male-dominated industry in South Africa and further afield in the continent. And that really speaks to the true nature of a leader that you are, an inspiring vessel for all photographers, women photographers across the continent. And we have industry heads from various countries with us today, from Uganda, from Lesotho. So it's really great to have this platform of sharing in the work that each of our speakers are doing, and to be able to captivate our audience members and to feel inspired that they too can get into the space and make their mark. So thank you so much to our speakers. We will have time for Q&A where we will engage the questions that have been shared by our attendees. So now, without further ado, I'll lead to our third speaker, Vanessa Sinden. Lesego, if you can please just share her bio with us on screen. There we go, thank you. Vanessa is the senior, let me go to it quickly, sorry. Vanessa is senior producer at Triggerfish Animation, which is Africa's leading animation studio with over 23 years of experience in both live action and animated filmmaking. She has produced some of Africa's most successful animated features, including Adventures in Zambezi, Kumba, and SEAL Team, and recently led projects for Disney Plus, Netflix, and Disney Junior, such as Super Team 4, Kia and the Kimoja Heroes, and Kizazi Moto, the Generation Fire. She's passionate about telling the original African stories that reflect diverse voices, and Vanessa is also committed to nurturing emerging talent, especially that of women, through initiatives like the Triggerfish Story Lab and various Netflix and Disney Labs and African Women in Animation platform, all of which are aimed at building a more inclusive animation industry across the continent. Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to have you, Vanessa, and over to you.
Thank you, Bongiwe, and thank you, Paula, for opening up this platform for me to share. And what an honor it is to sit in on all the other panelists and just listen to their stories. It is just such a pleasure. Thank you. I'm just going to try and share screen. I notice I can't share sound for some reason, even though in the tech check that was possible. But I'll just jump straight in. It's wonderful to be here, and just to share a little bit, I know that we are on the clock, so I'll go through it quite quickly. I'm a producer with Triggerfish. I have been with the studio for 16 years and was previously in live action before that, and really got into film because I was in some really great fun acting jobs on set and just realized this was my passion and my calling. And somehow fell into animation. You don't really study to work in animation outside of being a technical artist or an animator, you know, through an institution, but you know, to produce animation and to figure out this landscape and to create original African content and take it to global audiences, we kind of had to figure it out as we were swimming. And that is pretty much Triggerfish's story. But I'll jump straight into, sorry, into the beginning. Just a little intro on Triggerfish. We have a studio here in Cape Town, but also in Galway, Ireland, and in Manchester in the UK. And it's really just to make sure that we are, I'll just skip past the sizzle because I know we're on the clock. Just to stay relevant in terms of access to funding and partnerships and co-productions around the world. I'm going to try and keep this personal in my role with Triggerfish. I came on board to do their very first film, Adventures in Zambezi, top left, and then went straight on to producing Kumba. And that was, we started in 2009. And what an absolute initiation by fire. We released these both as a cinematic release to global audiences, dubbed in over 27 languages, over 70 million tickets sold, and quite a lot of learning through that whole process, and a bit of a burnout as well. And then came back to Triggerfish 2 years later, took a bit of a sabbatical and worked in marketing, which was what I studied at CPUT. And I came back to the team realizing that we hadn't invested enough in developing original African IP, and that there was this sort of, as it is within the film industry, you're project-based and you're working from project to project, but unless you've actually developed something and spent a couple of years in development on multiple projects, you won't have anything lined up and definitely won't have anything funded. And so that was a huge learning curve. And so in 2015, I came back to the team and we launched our very first lab, and I'll go into our labs in a bit, but that really set us up for a journey of creating some of the most iconic African content to the world. Sorry, this is a bigger presentation, so I'll just slip through. Just to quickly say that Triggerfish as a company has been a part of industry growth and a part of industry support since day zero in South Africa, having started the first association, Animation South Africa, hosting endless exchanges in multiple cities with free pizza and box wine to get people into the animation space. And that really is how the industry grew and really how it launched and became something. This is a long time ago, and obviously a lot has happened since then. But I wanted to focus a bit more on women in the industry and what that looks like. I have got statistics from a global perspective, but it is even more relevant here at home in South Africa or on the continent. When we talk about representation, typically it's on screen, as well as teams are actually writing those stories and directing those stories and giving green lights to those stories. And those are some of the barriers, systemic barriers that we see have really kind of put women at a disadvantage. We in the focus of gender equity, we looked at these figures and we made some steps to kind of right that wrong that we saw. We didn't see women represented on screen, and definitely not enough women of color and stories from women of color. But going back to global stats, it's very clear that we can see females represented on screen are just abysmal. These are from 2019, and 7 years later, there has been a shift, no doubt, beautifully so, but a lot of work still having to be done. Seeing that across animated films, 17% depict a woman, a female lead, and 40%, up to 40% of female cast. Of women of color, 3% in film and 12% in TV, abysmally low. Female directors are very rare in animation, and the women that have pushed those boundaries, a bit like Naya was speaking about, there are moving targets because we're against the system. Women who are leading in a space for the first time, regardless of your culture, you're a target, and you carry the weight of every other woman having an opportunity after you. And we've seen with the Brenda Chapmans, some really big films, that she was pulled off in her early years. This is US big studios, because the room disagreed with her viewpoint and her being pushed aside. I mean, these stories, there's so many of them, but 3% of female directors and 1% women of color. TV, it's slightly higher because of the nature of the work, but really abysmal in 2019. I had some more stats there that I just wanted to quickly get through. And when you look at gender gaps in actual key crew roles, it's massive. This is 7 years old statistics, and I lean into women in animation. I'm a member of an international organization, and these stats have been worked on globally, but still just shocking to see how this is a very male dominated, very white male dominated workspace, and therefore decisions that are being made about content, just really lean to one in one direction. But when you see, and there are some statistics around women in creative studies, specifically lining up for animation, 60% of the classroom is women, it's female. Yet 20%, this is in 2019, 20% of those women are actually employed or in the industry. And again, just looking at the systemic barriers that are, who's hiring like themselves, who's hiring because they feel more comfortable in the space that aren't pushing status quo. These figures here represent, student films that are presented at festivals, and yeah, you can see it's a lot healthier, where women are over the years pushing in the animation space to direct and write and create their own stories. But then there's this definite blockage down the pipeline. We speak about pipelines in animation, where crew are just pinched and women are just not getting opportunities. And so that's a lot of statistics, but all of that to say that at Triggerfish, we recognized quite quickly on when I came back to the team in 2015 that we needed to initiate incubators to accelerate women through the industry, accelerate people whose cultural groups weren't represented fairly in the past, and to write that. We launched in 2015 with our very first story lab, which was partnered with Disney and the DTI here in South Africa, and 1,378 creators from the continent sent us stories for TV and film, and we were able to select 35 to do masterclasses with us here in Cape Town with some big names in the industry, and 4 TV series moved into advanced development from this lab, 2 of which were led by female creators. This is back in early 2016 now. And the very first shows that came through were Kia and the Kimoji Heroes and Super Team 4, which the original ideas for those shows. Both of these projects were female led. And I want to quickly also just quickly touch on Mummy Case Team 4, which then became Super Team 4, was essentially one of the TV series out of that lab, where we worked with Malenga Mulindema. She's a Zambian creator. She literally applied at the last minute for the story lab and just wanted to see a superhero show with girls who look like her. Very simple premise for these young teenage girls having the opportunity to kind of see themselves represented on screen. At that point, we acknowledged that in crewing up, we absolutely didn't have enough writers of women of color to write the first season of Super Team 4. And so our Writers Lab was initiated at this point. 750 women applied with writing samples from mixed media, from live action, journalists, wrote and submitted stories, and we were able to work with shortlists, help upskill a nice amount of women, and then we're able to select writers to join us on the first season. And this process was really all inspired by Malenga and her desire to see her superhero stories that kids would be able to resonate with. We put a stellar team around Malenga of phenomenal writers. These are some of them on the top of Table Mountain when they were in Cape Town. And this show was the very first original African animated series that Netflix got behind, and we're very grateful for that. We did a couple of other labs, and these incubators essentially fast tracking. The talent is on the continent, no doubt. The opportunity is not. And so those doors are closed. There's systemic barriers to artists, creators, writers, directors getting those opportunities. And so these accelerators are to really smash open doors and support, upskill, and help fast track. We were able to do a director's lab as well, which was very much the backbone of the Kizazimoto Generation Fire anthology for Disney Plus. And in the same way, we're able to fast track. We've done 7 labs in the last 10 years, of which I've run most of them. And the latest I've just finished 4 weeks ago was a women director and animation art labs. And these labs were designed to take experts, women who are directing, women who are art directing, who are creative directors, and really take some young mentees under their wings and help them over 3 months, 3.5 months, deep dive into enabling them, their portfolios, supporting them with story, supporting them with directing tools, and all of that excellent stuff that they needed in order to break those barriers further. All women-led experts, and 47 women have just gone through that lab. And I won't go through all the labs. We have a business of animation lab currently running in Kenya, which is exciting. But all of this to say that that is really the backbone of our development division and our process. Where at the studio, we're intentionally looking for stories that stand out, stories that represent, stories that are authentic, and not shying away from what that's the creative director wanted to say. Just as a side note, as we had grew an industry and an organization, we also quite aware that not many, another systemic barrier, not everyone can afford to study animation in this country, and predominantly white South Africans have had the benefit of that. So we started an online academy where we gave free online courses, opportunities to do shorts and competitions and win all sorts of technical gear, and literally a crash course into, if you're a creator, an editor, a storyboard artist, you wanted to start your own business, this is the way to get started. And for us, that was really important to do that in order to break these barriers, to really give more opportunity. We also have a foundation that initiates scholarships and puts investment behind excellent talent and give them an opportunity where they wouldn't typically have gotten that. So we're not just an animation studio that has to keep the lights on, which often every month we're trying to do, even though there's so many successes. It is still running a business, but our development team has been the backbone of pushing this content. I've been very privileged to have developed and produced the majority of the work that you're seeing with amazing talent. Not all me, there are multiple producers and amazing artists and creators. Ninja Princess became Kia and the Komodo Heroes, was on Disney Junior, Disney Junior Plus, voiced by Daneo du Toit, South African actress. And we've had the pleasure of, I did a lot of voice production across the continent. I've recorded in over 9 African countries, looking for voice talent that were authentic and bring something of fresh flavor to our work. And this TV series on YouTube, I won't play anything, but it has been wonderful to see the love from celebrities and the love on social media and fans around the world who've resonated with Kia, who at the heart of it didn't just want to be a ninja, she also wanted to be a princess. And if every little girl, my daughter's a skater, she's 4, she's a skater, but also a ballet dancer. And, you know, so like girls can be just anything you want them to be. That's at the heart of Kia. And from a Southern African perspective, these shows are just full of light and rich in color. I'm going through it quite quickly, and I'm happy to share any materials or reach out if you would like to hear more after this session. Mama K's Super Team 4, I shared this with you with the team Malenga behind her, became Super Team 4, produced by some amazing international partnerships and co-productions. And we brought Mama K and these 4 girls who were recruited. Mama K is going into retirement. She's recruited by former, these girls were recruited by Mama K, who's a former secret spy in Lusaka City, and she has this underground HQ, and these girls go on to, with their skills, be her super team 4. And this journey with Netflix has been wonderful. All of our shows, we think that it was undermarketed, that it wasn't pushed enough. Marketing budgets weren't big enough because we know that a lot of girls from the continent have not seen these shows on the Disney or Netflix platforms. And that for us was a loss. We had tried to negotiate that these projects, these shows would go onto YouTube free to air, but we don't hold all the keys to those conversations. But here's a bit of fan love for Super Team 4 and girls just loving what Super Team 4 brings to TV that has never been seen before. I was also very grateful to have developed Kizazi Moto Generation Fire. I was going to share something, but considering my sound isn't working, I'm just going to flick past it. Apologies for that. But all of these clips and trailers are online. Kisasimoto Generation Fire started off with 73 creators Triggerfish reached out to and invited to pitch. This was a Disney partnership from the beginning, and Disney platform was racing against Netflix to have African content on the Disney Plus platform for the first time. And we were lucky to have produced all 10 films that came out of this process. And to be able to shape and to support and to work with these creators in these projects. 10 films, 10 films came out of this, 10 films that look distinctly different. It's never been done before, an African anthology of this size of this. We did it in 2 years, which was more than miraculous. And we did it with an amazing executive team, Peter Ramsey, Oscar-winning Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse, Tendai Nyeke, very own Triggerfish executive at the time, Zimbabwean executive, a creative director at the studio, and our studio produced all 10 films. We didn't produce all of them in our studio, but we produced 2 of 10, and we outsourced. The original goal of this was to look at studios across the continent, and we did an impact survey early on in our pitching to Disney to how amazing would it be to have an African anthology, but to have it all produced in African studios. We didn't quite get that right because what you'll see in this space is that it is very expensive to create animation, but it's also expensive to upskill ahead of, have an incubator ahead of a production for the Writers Lab for Super Team 4, to upskill a studio so that they could take on this sort of project. It's a high stakes project for Disney Plus, and it had to be super successful. And at one point, it was just decided they're not able to. We had to outsource to a couple of other studios, but our dream is to still upskill African studios, because the more we make our own content, the more we control what's made, and the more we control and shift the needle. 2 women who stand out in the space, Tsepo Moshe for her film First Totem Problems, and Nyendo Muki for her film Enkai. 2 of the projects that stand out from this, although we did have a third co-director, Catherine Green, who worked on Surfs and Goma, and directed that with her co-partner, Ntato Mogata. And it has just been such a joy to be able to walk with these women and to produce alongside them, and having, as Neo mentioned earlier in her session, it is so hard to be the first of. And these women have been the first of, and so much weight is resting on their shoulders to get it right. Generations of women's hopes and dreams are on their shoulders and getting it right. And so the way we pulled off these productions was to make sure they were supported. We had consultants, we had a lot of team behind not only the directors, but making sure these films were huge successes. Quickly going over to Star Wars Visions Volume 2, Nadia Darius, also one of our directors from Cape Town, had the opportunity to direct this short film in the Star Wars anthology, which was a beautiful film. And I'll just move on past there. And so all of this, and I'm wrapping up shortly, all of this to just inspire you, to give you a quick insight into what's happening in animation. We're just one studio, we're just one team. Our development team is 4, we're small. We work more than 8 hours a day. We're passionate about this, but it's been beautiful to watch, because the seed of work, the seeds of all of this work over the last almost 10 years now that we've been deeply rooted in solid development from the continent is really paying off. These projects in development, just as a quick heads up, we have a number of preschool series, mostly women-led series in the space. Development for us means they're literally in development space. It's scripts, it's art, it's pitching, it's markets, it's finding funding. This is what development is for us. We've got a number of 6 to 11 kids shows, most of which are female-led teams on those. And on our feature films, we have a number of feature films, but really 3 strong feature films that are female-led, all from African creators, which is so exciting. And it's just been such a privilege to walk alongside these ladies. And I'm just going to, sorry. I wanted to wrap it there because I know we're on the clock, but that's really all I wanted to share with you and inspire you, and I'm happy to handle any questions that may come my way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. Thank you for that inspiring presentation, and really to look at what lies behind animations. We never really give too much thought over that, but the power of animation is so huge because it's inspired by our very utmost surreal imaginations. And so when someone can create something out of nothing, that can really shape how people begin to imagine themselves, and how people begin to imagine the communities that they living in. And so it's very important, especially for young girls, how that imagery reflects on them and their views of themselves. So it's really inspiring to see the work that you're dedicated towards and shaping these narratives, and showcasing the gap that exists in the industry and how you're trying to fill it, showing us that it's still a very largely male dominated field. And that's a challenge, but it also presents an opportunity that you're also leading in focusing on these dedicated initiatives to bring in more women into the space of animation, into the space of creating, directing toons. So it really is inspiring. And there was someone in the comments section who said they want to work at Triggerfish. So that is the impact that you've made to really show people what is there, what exists, and the opportunity that lies ahead. Thank you so much for that. We have a number of questions and engagements, and it really feels like we're in the same room. So thank you so much to everyone for your engagements with our speakers. So we will give time for the questions that have been presented towards the end. I will just allow our last two speakers to just give us their remarks, and then we'll open up for Q&A before we close. So let's then hand over to our next speaker, who is Menentle is not able to join us. So if you can please move to the next speaker there, Lesego. Thank you. Then that would be Sosina Mengistu, who is a photographer based in Ethiopia, and her work focuses on documentary production, travel, capturing culture, landscapes, religion, and everyday life. And she also uses self-portraiture to explore her personal journey. Sosina, thank you so much for your time. Over to you.
Thank you so much, and I'm going to apologize all of you because I have a prepared presentation, and because of the electricity, I can't access my PC right now, so I'm going to talk. And honestly, I'm a little bit scared because I'm here with an amazing woman. It's really an honor to be here with Ntsoma. She's an amazing photographer. I'm always looking for her works, and yeah, it's really crazy to be her on the same webinar on her with her. So thank you so much for having me. So I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Sosana Mengistu. I'm a documentary and travel photographer from Ethiopia. Basically, I'm from a small town called Asosa, which is close to a Sudan border. So I started photography, I would say 7 years ago as a hobby. I started photography while I was in university, but I started professionally 4 years ago after I graduated from university. So I graduated by engineering, but now I'm a photographer, a full-time photographer. So, so my journey in photography started when I was a kid. My dad is a hobbyist. He always take a picture when he's go out for a field work. So I was really passionate about to travel and see those photos and to meet those peoples. And he always writes a note at the back of the photographs. So it's a full story for me. I see the places on the photo, and there's a story at the back of the photos. So I always curious about it and to visit those places. So after many years and when I joined university. So I got a chance to visit different parts of Ethiopia. So I started capturing different cultures, traditions, especially women and children, through my phone. And I don't know how to operate camera at that time, but yeah, and then COVID happened in 2020. So it was like my turning point for me because I used to travel to different parts of Ethiopia. I met a lot of people. There's a lot of culture and tradition. But when the lockdowns happened, I don't have any subject to shoot, to document. So I decided to build a body of work, even though I'm not a professional photographer, I'm just using my phone. So I just capturing my little cousins, their day-to-day life, how like their emotions, their sadness, their happiness, their boredom. So yeah, that was like uh, so we stayed like 8 months in the lockdown. So I just captured every day of their day-to-day life. And besides that, I started my self-portraiture as well because as a Black woman, we always capture people's, cultures, traditions, but we forget, sometimes we forget to record ourselves, record our journey. It's like, for me, it's like very important to uh, document myself because it shows how I grow up, how I make progress, and it allow me to show my emotions and it's like self-portraiture is like an art for me by itself. So I think a lot of us, we forget to record ourselves, to document ourselves. So I did that. And about my little cousin's story, it's ended up exhibited in London. And yeah, it was a big a big project, even though I started in like with my phone. So maybe it's a little bit inspiration. Gear doesn't matter. Yeah, so that's the journey. So after I graduated, I decided I'm not going to be an engineer. I'm going to be a photographer. So yeah, and so I applied to different different production companies in Ethiopia. So at the moment, I don't even know. Let alone I saw shutter speed, blah blah. No, I don't even hold a camera. I have no idea. But I just built my portfolio like with my little cousins, some of my self-portraits and some travel photos, and try to make a simple portfolio that shows my work, and then try to apply everywhere. And I got accepted as an intern, and after that, like after two 2 months of an intern, I become a full-time employee. And then now I know how to operate a camera. I know how to take a picture with a proper equipment. So it gives me more confidence to do it. So after that, I collaborate with different artists, photographers, and I get a chance to work with different NGOs, European Union, African Union. And I wish I showed some of my works here, but unfortunately. And so I got a chance to capture the president, the prime minister, and it was like, for me, it was like a dream. Am I living my dream, or am I like, it's just it wasn't like feel real. So it was ups and downs journey, but I learned a lot about from my journey, because being a self-taught photographer is a little bit hard, because like when you meet a professional photographer, like you can talk, you can talk from your feelings, not in a technical terms, and sometimes they don't understand what you mean. So so I started teaching myself from YouTube, from different photographers, from workshops. So I started applying different workshops because I need to get a knowledge and a technical advice from my from other photographers as well. So yeah, and I'm still learning. I'm like not I would say I'm not like a big photographer, but like I'm still on the process of like growing myself through photography because I love photography so much. And when I see a female photographer, it's for me it's like a big inspiration for me. And yeah, I think that's my story. And now I'm a freelance full-time photographer, like because uh, like working 9 to 5 is not me. I need my freedom. I want to travel different parts. So now I've become a different photographer. So yeah, I work with different magazines, um, collaborate with different people. Yeah, that's my story. And I think that's it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Christina. I think we are in a room filled of people who are the first of, and you definitely are the first of a number who have taken photos using their mobile phone and ended up in an exhibition in London. So that really speaks to, how determined you are, and we recognize that and congratulate you for those efforts. And being in the room with leading women in visual media is really the networking platform that will take you further as you explore how much of a mark you can continue to make in the industry. So really thank you for sharing your journey. It's really inspiring to each and every one of our attendees, and for showing us that gear doesn't really matter. It's about what you're capturing and how you've captured it, and the narrative that you're sharing at the end of the day. So really, thank you for giving us that insight and that kind of perspective on how you've captured that everyday life from your family to your community, and shared it with the world at large. Really commendable work. I would like to just apologize to our attendees that we are over time, but to thank you so much for staying with us. We just have one more speaker, and then we will have a few minutes of Q&A and close the webinar. So thank you so much for your patience and your enthusiasm and your support to our speakers today. And there is a question if the recording will be shared. Yes, it will. And we're now going to hand over to our last speaker, who is Abdul Hassam Aderonke, who's a seasoned communications consultant, media and documentary producer, researcher, and writer with a strong focus on gender and maternal health. Aderonke is also a creative writer, and her recent work, In the Heart of the Flood, is a serialized novella that follows Amina Danladi, a medical school dropout navigating trauma and survival in the flood-stricken northern Nigeria. The story, rich in themes of resilience, womanhood, and cultural heritage, is available on Medium, and archive of our own. Let me now not take too much of your time. Aderonke, thank you so much, and over to you. Aderonke, are you with us? You can unmute yourself. Okay, I think while she tries to get through there? There we go. All right, over to you, Aderonke. Thank you.
Hello. Oh, well, I
Hi,
listened to
hello.
everyone. I almost forgot what I wanted to say. Good to be in the presence of amazing women, and good to be with some amazing women talking about their experiences. It's quite inspiring. I don't even know really where to start from. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
So while my screen is booting up, I will just continue.
Yes.
So my name is Derunke Abdul, and I am a Nigerian communications consultant, media and documentary producer, researcher, novelist, mental health and maternal advocate. My work sits at the intersection of visual truth and creative narrative. I tell stories. Sorry, 1 minute. Screen is really messing up at the moment, but I'll just continue. I tell stories that often go unheard, stories that exist in the pauses between what is said and what is lived. I am honored to be part of this powerful gathering of African women creators, reclaiming space, screen, and story. So over the years, I have come to realize that documentary filmmaking or storytelling is more than just visual reporting. As a media and documentary producer, this meeting is being recorded. I didn't start at the current position that I am in. I started out as a sorry, my
It's okay. I think you can just mute your other device there and you can continue to record yourself.
Okay. Sorry, I was just trying to share my screen, which has interrupted me a bit. So I will do that again. Sure. Thank you. And yes, can everyone see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm just going to continue. As a media and documentary producer, I didn't start at this current position. I started out as a street photographer, an average one at best. But what I had was the desire to document the world around me. That desire grew into discovering the discrepancies in our mundane everyday lives. So I started documenting that. In the process, I grew from a street photographer to documentary works. And I enjoyed visualizing and executing, so I took this role seriously. But one thing I found out to be both my strength and, as Apostle Paul would say, a great thorn in my side was seeing the gaps in systems. You might ask me why it's a thorn, but seeing the gap doesn't necessarily mean that you can have an immediate impact in your society, or you can make a rapid change that you will see and will be in effect immediately. And that is when I realized that in this process, you can actually be mentally affected by the work that you do. And seeing the pain, the suffering, and I gradually realized that the drops of water actually will make a mighty ocean. By that, I mean that I grew, as I was going to be a communications consultant, I realized that if the impact I'm making at the moment will in turn make the impact I want to see at a later time. So let me bring it home by saying this adage. A Nigerian adage says that what an elder see while sitting down, a child will need to sit while standing on the shoulders of elders to see. So I often felt like the impact I created was minute, but I always have to remind myself that I am but one drop of water in an ocean, being given the opportunity for others to stand on my shoulder, just as I've stood on others' shoulder. Now, that's one piece of the puzzle. Here's another piece. As women in Africa, we are often spoken about rather than spoken to, or we are erased entirely. Now, documentary allows me to hold the space for real people, to show them as a whole, to show these people as a whole, messy, brilliant, how brilliant they are, how ordinary they are, and also how extraordinary they are. I'm especially drawn to women's realities, how we love, survive, labor, resist, and imagine futures in the face of hardship or joy. And this is because I am a woman myself and my identity is multi-layered. So I wanted to share 2 pieces of my work with us, but my screen isn't allowing me to, it's frozen. So I will just share it audibly. The first documentary I made that I really, really felt like I had created something of value, something worth sharing with the world was the documentary for UNESCO, we titled Keeping Girls in the Picture campaign. That told the realities of different girls who were affected, whose their education was affected by COVID-19. And how miraculous this project was to me was that I was given the opportunity, the creative license to do with what it is I wanted with this project. So what I literally did was I chose the 6 geopolitical zones in Nigeria, which is actually very difficult for you as a documentary photographer, for them to give you creative license to be able to shoot the documentary based on just the topic. It's just like giving the topic, okay, we want to do a campaign of keeping girls in the picture. What happened after COVID-19? And they were like, okay, we don't really know what is going on ground. You be our eyes and our ears. So I designed this story to show, because we have in Nigeria, we have 3 ethnic groups. And also we have that's the 3 main ethnic groups. And we also have like over 300 ethnic groups. So trying to represent this story in over 300 languages and ethnic groups was as challenging as possible. So what I did was I just chose 6 geopolitical zones, which was like Bauchi, Gombe, like just different places to have the voice, the languages of these women and girls represented. Because you can't say that girls' education without saying women who are actually before them. So we went to different locations to document their stories. And in that process, we did it in just less than, I think, 2 weeks, because I really felt like sick for like months after that, because how the pressure was high and we had to do this to be in 6 different, I'm thinking about being in one place where, you have to like take another 2 hours flight to another place, then jump on a boat, go through an ocean, different places for you to get these girls, all these women's stories. So we were able to feature different girls in different languages, telling us what was the reason behind not being in school. And you would think that you only need to tell a story of them not being in school by showing them in front of the school, or showing them in their home as like saying, oh, I can't go to school because of this. But one story that actually struck a chord with me was a girl who, even 1 year before the COVID-19, she wasn't able to go to school. She was learning how to be a tailor. She was learning how to be a tailor, like as an apprentice with one of our teachers, trying to save up money alongside with her mother, who's also a street food seller. So when COVID-19 struck, she literally had lost all hope of going back to school, because she was like, how will now start saving money to go back to school? And that was where the story was. We were like, yes, this is the story that we want to tell. We were not just telling how they would drop out for school and then go back to school. But no, it showed that even after the COVID-19, few months after the COVID-19, she couldn't still go back to this teacher. And that's because our teacher's business also was affected by the COVID-19, which was actually a ripple effect to her, meaning that people around her were affected, she was affected, and everybody in society at large was affected. So that's actually what the story was, showing what it is that we couldn't see on a normal basis, the multi-layered levels of how education is affected through communion and through interacting with other people. So sorry. Yes. And then I thought to myself that as a documentary photographer, there are other things that I wanted to see in my work, but I was not able to see because, I always have to think of the ethics of the story. I can't force a story. I can't push a story. I can only tell it ethically. And by this, I mean that I can tell it as honest as possible and respectable to my audience, to my case studies, because it is their story to tell. As storytellers, we often forget that we are actually telling the story of these people, because we are the ones that actually hold the power in the story. We are the ones with the camera. We are the ones with the story we want to tell. And that's actually what we think, that we are the ones with the story, but we are actually just the tool being used to bring out these people's story to a larger audience. So I always have to remind myself that when I'm going to tell a story, I always have to realize that people who see me as someone who is powerful. Which in retrospect, I'm actually only there to serve them to bring their stories out. So I always have to remember that when it is I'm telling their story, I always have to remind them that you don't have to, cushion the story off to make it sound like what you think I want to hear. I'm with you on the story. Just share the story with me. And then I realized these gaps in documentary, and I was like, not only in documentary, I realized this gap also in the movies that I watch, in the Nigerian movies that I watch. It was almost like Nigerian movies were set up for global audiences to accept. And I was like, we have good stories, we have foundations, we have different ethnic groups, and we also have a lot of societal stories that we can actually relate and put them in our stories. Which is why I started writing. I went back to writing, I went back to my vision board, I went back to writing, and I wrote this is actually my second book, but the first book I actually published online, which was In the Art of the Flood. And this came as a result of the Maiduguri flood that happened when the dam was broken, and how the media representation was they wanted arms, they had needs, and we need more funding, more funding. But then I sat down to think about the women who were resilient in these processes, the women who against all odds were able to protect their family, fend for their family, being the emotional support for their family, even though they were going through a lot at the moment. So I wrote the book of Amina, wrote the story in the Art of the Flood, and Amina Dalhadi was the center of the story. And I also wrote that there were 5 women also were there to support her. I showed through the process of the book how she was able to survive the flood, how she was able to hold her children, even though she had emotional scars that she was carrying. So what it is I couldn't do in my documentary, I started doing writing. The same thing with my second book that's actually coming. The second book that's actually coming out. It's 9 Nightmares. It shows how what abuse can do to a woman, and not only a woman, but actually the entire community at large. Because when we think about abuse, we think about rape, we think about emotional abuse, we think about domestic violence. We think that only the woman is being abused, but we don't put effect actually goes around in the community and even in the immediate family. So when I write those books, I put the social construct in mind, and most of the time I mix up the genders. I mix up the rules of the genders because I want to be able to trigger people's mind. I want to be able to trigger their thought processes so that they could see that if it wasn't this way, what other way can it be? If it wasn't this way, how can we share? How can we learn? How can we understand how to be together as one, as a community at large? So I almost got ahead of myself. While I was going through all of this, my process, starting from being a street photographer up until a documentary photographer and a comms consultant and novelist that I am, I realized one thing: like, we are so in a hurry to get from point A to point B. I experienced that. Like, I see other people's work and I look at my work and I'm like, oh, I'm not good enough. Like, what am I doing? Like, have I fallen off the tangent? And I realized that everybody's actually going through a process. And when I look back, especially while I was trying to do the presentation and I did, which is it pains me because I can't share it. I went back through a time lapse of myself, and I saw where it is I started from and where it is that I am. And I realized that the reason why I can tell the stories that I'm telling today, it's not because it's because of I was able to live through all of these processes. I was able to absorb all of these processes. I was able to develop the tools to be able to process everything I went through. So I want to tell everybody, anyone that was out there that's listening, that your goal is not the destination. It is the process that you're in right now that actually creates the story it is you're trying to create. You can see from all of us speakers, because without experiencing what it is you have to experience, you will not be able to write this kind of stories that you do, which makes your story unique to you. So when you see other people's stories, remember that that's the story that they can tell. Always look inward and try to understand and try to see to yourself that what are the stories that I can tell as a person, because I know that this person is telling very good, authentic, lovely stories, but look inwards, look deeper, because these stories that I'm telling, especially the 9 Nightmares, my second novel that's coming out, had to do with me actually having sleep paralysis and nightmares and coming in contact with different people. And also the same way the podcast that I am like releasing very soon, that is in the works, is about maternal health advocates, and not just maternal health. Like, I'm trying to see what happened in our ancestors' time, in like our midwives, our traditional birth healers, and why it is that we usually let all of those practices go to take in the medical aspect. And why was I able to look at this? And because right now I have a multi-layered identity. I'm a woman, I'm female, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, and I'm a Christian. All this has actually helped me know that it can actually show in how I receive care, how it is I train my child, and how it is my child goes into the community at large. So when I try to think about when I produce my work, I do documentaries or I tell a story, I try to see the larger construct and how it affects other people. And I'm not just trying to write stories because as a Christian personally, I really don't like watching Christian movies because it's so sober. And sometimes it doesn't give me that retrospective feeling. It just gives me like, oh, I think I'm going to die next moment. What am I going to do in my next life? But no, we need to tell stories that like, it's not like you have to put it that, oh, this is like push Christ in people's faces or push gender norms in people's faces, like change. No, you have to write these stories that everybody can resonate with. It's an everyday, day-to-day life stories, but your messages are in that construct, in that story, that by the time you are done with that story, you can sit down and be like, oh my God, I can reflect, I can relate to this person. And for me, I always, when people ask me that, oh, you talk about movies a lot, you're very passionate about movies, you're very passionate about that documentary, did you watch this movie Straw? Did you like it? I'm like, Straw is not like the number one on my movie list, but it's something I could relate to as a mother. It's something I could relate to as a woman. It's something I could relate to as a Black person. Why? Because I could see her pain, I could feel her pain, and I could feel why at that moment she did what she did. And that's the stories we need to get across. It doesn't need to be the blockbuster stuff. We often try to sit down right at that blockbuster movie that we can't release it until it is perfectly done. But no, there are stories that in time it will actually be a drop of water, in the ocean that actually create that mighty ocean, that effect we needed to create. So let me know, because of time, let me just let me just pause there and say that the time to do it is now, and the process, you're actually at your goal right now. You're where you need to be to write that story you need to write, to, you know, make that animation you need to make that novel you need to make that documentary you need to make. You are not out of inspiration. I also everyone say that, look, you're waiting for inspiration. Like, look into your life. Your life is the inspiration. What have you been going through? What are you doing? What did you need to bring out? Like, that story is already there inside of you. You have it, just like release it. Thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you so much, Deronke, for
Yes.
that passionate reflection. Really is true that it's not about, the goal is not the destination, but it's the process. And it's in the process that the storytelling is inspired. So thank you so much for those reflections, and the wisdom as well, that the drops of water make mighty water. I will put that up somewhere because that really resonated quite strongly. Thank you so much. And I think we have with us really tiny drops of water that are together making mighty oceans. So really thank you everyone, and I will just allow us to have a few minutes of Q&A. If I can just ask the speakers to just reflect for maybe a few seconds in answering the questions that have been directed by our attendees. So firstly, a question directed at Becky. Did you ever, and this is coming from Nikita Ramkinsoon, who's asking, Becky, did you ever have the feeling that others who made it in the industry gave you a chance or pulled the ladder up behind them? And then the next question is directed to Vanessa. Firstly, there's a comment to Vanessa from Nicole, and she said, my 8-year-old son loves Mama K's Super 4. Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised how authentic it was. It didn't feel forced. Thank you so much for this work. It means the world to the kids, even if they're not conscious about it. You're expanding their worlds. And please don't shy away from further capturing the realities of African children. Sometimes it's sad, but it's often funny, entertaining, educational, and adventurous. And that was a comment to you and your work at Triggerfish there, Vanessa. But the question is on how do you do your budget, especially in scenario where the industry is competing with non-professionals budgets. And I think that that the budgets are many times way below the limit, and that was from Jacqueline Opa. And then the next question I'll direct to Newo, and it is, how do you deal with fear and trauma? I once attempted to get underground at an abandoned mine, but failed when I realized how deep it was. So if our speakers can please just reflect on those questions as swiftly as you can, and then I will allow you, Paula, to please provide us with our closing remarks. Thanks so much. So we can take it from Newo, and then Becky, and then Vanessa, please. Thanks. Newo, you can respond.
Hi, and how do I deal with fear and trauma? I guess when I was in the newspaper space, there was no There's never been a time where I had to actually think about my safety, truth be told. I was just always chasing the story. But there was a point where it really got to me, and I couldn't take it anymore. I experienced severe depression, serious depression, to a point that for about 2.5 years, I couldn't even watch the news on television. And that's one of the reasons why I had to resign from my work, because I needed to heal. So trauma is real. And as storytellers, we need to take care of ourselves. We know that we are human beings, we're fragile beings. And once we invest a lot into the stories that you do, because we do, when you work for a newspaper, you don't get to choose what sort of stories you do, I was in a position where I could not feel any pain at some point, even when somebody comes to me and say they've lost a parent, they've lost a family relative. I could not feel anything because I'd seen the worst out there. I've seen, especially when that relative had passed away in the presence of their loved ones. For me, it was it's just one of those, you're very fortunate that you had to actually say your goodbyes. There are people that I'd seen, corpses that I photographed. I've lost count of the number of corpses that I photographed when I was working night shift at the Star. There were lots, some with missing limbs and brain splashed on the ground. It was really intense. So trauma is inevitable, but you just have to. My advice is that when you go into situations like this, you're more than welcome. You can always tell your editors that this is too much for you. But at the time, because I think I expressed this multiple times, I had a point to prove. For me, there was no time for me to be fragile in any way, because my mission was not accomplished, and I needed to fulfill that promise that I had made to myself, that I am going to push myself and not be regarded as somebody who's weak. Hence, I had to throw myself into situations that were very uncomfortable for me as well. It was at a time where voices of the female voice was really needed. A female voice was really needed in that sector. And I was there, and I had to just forget about myself and focus more on the job at hand. And then fear, I've been underground, I've been on numerous mines. Fear will always be there, because especially when you know that anything can happen. But I think the motivating part is you have to know why you're there. You're not forced. Nobody put a gun on your head and say you have to be there. So it's more you have to take responsibility of your safety. You have to go in there knowing that you might not come back. And it's great if you do come back. I've been through mines. I mean, I think I've traveled down 7 or 8 times underground. It's not a pleasant space to work within. But then my motivation was there are people, I'm surrounded by people that do this job on a daily basis, and yet they do come alive. It's once off that you hear of an incident that happened at a mine. So I cannot just not go underneath and tell a story of these people, document them, and tell the world that the reason why we wear diamonds, the reason why we wear bracelets, golds, those are the people that are actually digging up, and they have to sacrifice for us to look good, And then sorry, okay, all right, sorry.
Sorry to cut you there. Do you think you can just wrap that thought up?
I got so.
Let me just give you one more question that came from Nicole earlier. She's asking, what advice do you have on tools that she can easily access to polish her images? And do you think one can be a great photographer without any formal training? Quickly, please, just 1 second on tools that can be used to polish images.
Tools that, I think that question is directed to the wrong person, because I started photography when we didn't have Photoshop. So I tried to get the right picture at the time of creation. So maybe the younger generation can respond to that. But in terms of polishing the skill, you just have to shoot a lot. You just have to shoot a lot, because then your style will be refined, your technique will be refined as you go. I think that's my response to that question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neo. And then over to Becky on the question that was directed to you, please. Becky, you still with us?
Yes.
Let me just find the question. Do you still have the question?
Yes, I do.
Great,
Did
thank
you
you.
ever have the feeling that others made it in the industry give you a chance or pull the ladder up behind them? Yes. So far, my experience, I think most of the people who have helped me are people who are already in a certain level of their career that is not where I am. So, and there are people I look up to. So the first answer to the question is yes. And I would just like to say, as much as you're looking up to people that are already in the industry before you and they're doing amazing in their path, I think you should just grow with your peers. It's important that you grow with your peers, grow with your the same people, you're on the same level. That's how you improve in your skill while you look up to others and then you ask questions. I think that's what I can say on this question.
Thank you so much. Vanessa?
Yes, thanks. I saw some questions as well in the chat. Thank you for those. How do we put our budgets together? It's really trial and error. So when I started with the team in 2009, every time you do a budget, you have to go back and do a retrospective of like what worked, what didn't, what could we do better, and then adjust our budgets. Obviously, as a South African studio back in the day, we were able to do our first 3 films at a price point where the quality was so much better than European studios doing a similar kind of production value, but their budget was maybe 3 times more. And so we had that competitive advantage. We're in a market at the moment where we all work online, so we use a lot of, crew internationally as well. But the market is at a point where budgets are just being slashed by a third, and it's a crazy time to be in animation. Having said all of that, budgets, yeah, it's a big question. But our budgets, what if someone's coming into the industry and wanting to produce an animation and doesn't know how to put a professional budget together, there are a couple of templates that are available, and I could definitely share some of those. And understanding the animation pipeline is key, whether it's stop frame, 2D or 3D CG animation. All of those, you need to have some sort of industry sort of knowledge about that. But there are templates that can be shared easily, no problem at all. So, and I saw, Paula, you asked if you mentioned Adventures in Zambezia, and Kumba as well was also very big box office hits. The interesting thing about being a small little South African studio who was sitting on these big films was we needed at least 7 partners ahead of us in terms of stakeholders in a partner tier. And we were always right at the bottom. And it's just one of those things about it's unethical production, unethical co-production with partners who, those systemic barriers where the system is an old school system, and we just didn't pull profits that you would have seen at box office numbers. We didn't pull those numbers. The money that's come through now that's sort of trickling through as profits are all reinvested back into development, because development in animation can be on one TV series 2 years, not full time. We'll put the project on a shelf, we'll come back to it, we'll write for 3 months, we'll go put it on the shelf. But all of that money into people, talent, ideas needs investment. And so all of our profits have gone into that. Which, yeah, we're still having to learn what it's like to work with partners who are into ethical co-production, because I really believe the creators, the storytellers, the people on the ground with whose content is sought after are not getting the best deals. And it's because the system is set up against us. And it's a big conversation, and we have to break barriers in that space and have our voice heard. But slowly, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vanessa, for that response. And thank you wholly to our speakers. Thank you, Neo. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Becky. Thank you, Aderoke. And thank you, Sosina, for taking the time to inspire us and to give us some thought-provoking reflections, sharing your journey and how the process is coming about and the inspiration behind it all, using the lens and using the screen, telling the story of the African continent, community by community, and making an impact and reach within the world. We wish you all the best as you continue in the developments and the visual art creations that you're working within every day. It really has been a very wholesome discussion that we had, and I think we've touched on every aspect of the objectives that we've set for this discussion, to find ways that African voices can be enhanced, to explore the role of visual storytelling and cultural representation, socio-political change, discussing the barriers, systemic barriers that are faced by women in visual media, including costs, funding, safety, representation, sharing our knowledge, the tools, strategies for aspiring creators and media professionals, while also building on this cross-border solidarity and connections and networking among African media professionals. So thank you so much for engaging with us in this space. And I will allow our CEO, Paula Frey, to give us the closing remarks to end this webinar discussion. Thank you so much, Paula, and thank you once again to attendees and speakers.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Bongi, for that. I want to just say, Evelyn, that I saw your comment right at the end there on how do we as women visual creators embrace AI tools to enhance our work? Do we see it as an opportunity or as a threat? And I think perhaps that is a webinar for another day, and we'll certainly put it on our agenda. What an inspiring and affirming session this has been. I just have to say that I have copious notes, but given the time constraints we have, I'm going to get straight to it to say thank you very much on behalf of Frame Media Foundation. Thank you to our speakers and our participants for joining us today as we celebrated and learned, I think, from African women who are reshaping the visual media space, not only with creativity, but also with courage, clarity, and conviction. I want to say, Bongi's already said it, but I really do want to give a heartfelt thank you to our phenomenal speakers for their generosity, for the insights and the energy they brought into the space. We're certainly going to be watching and continue to learn from you. I think that together our speakers have really shown that being a visual media creator is more than just about technical skill. All of you just said it's about holding space, it's about changing perception, it's about rewriting the story from the inside out. And so really, we're committed here at the foundation to building a community that supports African women like you to strive, to lead, and to reclaim the lens. If you're working on a project, you're looking for mentorship, you're curious about our training, the work we do, please do reach out to us. I'm easy. If you don't remember, pfrey@frayintermedia.co.za, then paulafrey@gmail works just as well. We'd love you to we'd love to walk this journey with you, and help us also to reach more women, to keep creating, keep leading, and keep making, as you yourself said, the invisible visible. Thank you very much, everyone. Goodbye.